There we go. So, hello everybody. I thought I'd go through a little bit of a walkthrough of my latest Lego creation. I thought I did something kind of like this for my space shuttle, my 1/55th scale space shuttle. I thought I'd do the same thing for my 1/35th scale Tomcat that that I'm almost done. I'm almost in it. It's almost finished. Doesn't have any markings or stickers yet. But except for a few different pieces, like different colored canopy pieces, I want trans clear for that, not the trans blue. But in a few other little exceptions, it's pretty much done, and I'm pretty happy with it altogether. So this is a Grumman F-14 Tomcat is what it is, and it's basically, you could call it the A or the B model at this point. The only real difference is the engines, going from the engines that they had stalling problems with to the upgraded ones. But you could call it either, I guess, depending on what era you want to do it, because the F-14As were quite common in the early years of the Tomcat flying. But yeah, this is kind of in the white-bellied, also with the white kind of nose cone design, which is, I'm kind of going for the VF1 Wolfpack style. Although you could do something like VF-84, the Jolly Rogers, if you just didn't have the white nose cone, kind of thing like that, and it would look pretty good. And you'd have to extend the anti-glare masking down the back as well and up the sides of the cockpit. But those are little tiny differences. I thought I wouldn't do VF-84 just because everybody does VF-84, and it's a little repetitive. So I thought I saw a 1/15 scale Tomcat by James Cherry, who did VF1 Wolfpack, and I thought it was absolutely beautiful. So I thought, and it's one of my favorite squadron designs, so I thought that would be a perfect one to do for a Tomcat, because there's not a lot of them out there. In fact, I think James Cherry's is one of the only VF1s I've seen, besides like in Lego format. Everybody else likes to do Black Aces or the Jolly Rogers, or even the not real VF1 that's in Top Gun with Tom Cruise, because the plane that they actually fly in that movie isn't actually a real squadron. It says it's VF1, but it is not VF1. VF1 is Wolfpack, which is what I actually want this one to be, which is quite a bit different markings than they show in the movie. Anyways, that's enough talking about that. So we can start off with some of the features of this plane. So I was actually quite impressed with the amount of detail I was able to get into this model for its size. It's about 22 inches long altogether, and it's pretty heavy. I haven't weighed it yet, so I don't know exactly how much it weighs, but it is, for all things, it is actually pretty sturdy enough that you can pick it up by the back and actually hold it up pretty well, and it's somewhat swooshable. You might not want to do that for too long, because it is heavy. That's the problem, and it's uncomfortable to hold, so you might drop it, and I would hate to see it be dropped. But anyways, yeah, so one of the main, I'll start off with, well, the main feature of the Tomcat is the variable geometry wings. It was one of the few planes that actually did this, and it was fairly widely manufactured for a plane that did this as well. Like, there's a few others, like the B2, or is it B1? Sorry, it's the B1, whoops, the B1 Lancer, and the Tornado, which also kind of do the same thing, as well as the F-111B, which was the predecessor to the Tomcat, which is kind of, when they were prototyping these things, they started with the 111B, and then they moved on to the Tomcat, which was a lighter version, but it was also capable of carrying the AIM-54 Phoenix missile, which is also on this model. I'll show that later. But yeah, so the sweep wings are actually relatively simple. They actually go on a single hit, and they're actually on a single hinge, so they do actually move together using a linear rail in the middle. But just because the wings angle a little, I have to hold them both just to keep the flaps in. But they go back quite nicely right there, and they create the iconic look of the Tomcat with its wings folded back like this. Here, I'll move my hand so you can see the top there, like this. And the angles are actually pretty close to the real thing. Some of the angles are hard to achieve just because the Tomcat is full of angles that you can't quite perfectly get in Lego, which is a little annoying. Such as, I'm not totally happy with the angling of the bit in front of where the swivel point on the wing is, but it's about as close as it's going to get, I think, for my model. But yeah, as we speaking of the wings again, they actually have 3 different functions built into each wing. I wanted to make sure that you could get as much functionality that the real plane has as possible. So I'll move this right here. So it's actually got movable flaps, which can be posed up and down, similar to how the real plane worked. So you can go up and down on both sides of the wings. And then, furthermore, there's also two parts of the spoilers that actually come up as well, because during when the Tomcat was flying with its wings open at low speeds, it actually didn't have ailerons, and it used flaps and spoilers to actually move it to roll itself back and forth, which is rather interesting. And of course, at high speeds, it used the elevators for that because the spoilers and flaps are tucked away under the fuselage when it's actually in high speed. But another thing, and I thought this one was really cool because I really wanted a plane to have slats, and I was fairly successfully able to actually create posable slats down the front of each of the wings, like so that the plane actually does have fairly accurate wing design, which is actually which was fairly hard to incorporate. And of course, it doesn't look so great on the bottom because of that. It's quite a interesting structure to make sure that it's actually able to stay pretty strong. But altogether, I'm pretty happy with that result. I'll put those away for now. All right. Why don't we start at the front of the plane for the rest of this? So the first thing that you'll be able to notice is right up the nose is the canopy, which is very similar to the Brickmania style of canopy. That was definitely my inspiration for how this one is built, just because I thought those cylinder pieces are absolutely perfect for capturing the shape of the Tomcat. And of course, it can open up as well, kind of posed like the real thing would. In one big piece, leaving the windshield where it is, which I'm pretty happy with. Although my last Tomcat that I built in 2018 used the same function, so this isn't really new. But inside, you actually get two little guys that are in there, that are very, very tightly squeezed in there. But they do fit, and they have the consoles and the panels and everything, although the ejector seats are not perfectly realistic. They're kind of built into the floor just because there's not a lot of room with the landing gear well right beneath them. So it's about as close as I think it's going to get. As we look just beside there, though, we can actually get to see the intakes. And one of the really interesting features about the Tomcat is it had very slightly canted intakes, very, very slightly, and it gives it a look. Which kind of distinguishes it from a Eagle, which has very straight intakes. So you can see that there is actually a slight angle with the canted intakes there. Which has to do with the front profile, which does a lot for the front profile of the Tomcat here. So I was really happy with how those turned out all together. And then here, to finish up the stuff on the top, we'll just turn it all the way around so we can get a look at the back here. So at the back of the plane, we have the two main engines, which are not too special. I don't have opening engine shrouds or anything. I just didn't think at this scale it was really too important to have that, and it would be way more complicated just to figure that out in the first place. But what I did make sure I got, of course, the elevators, which can be posed, and they're actually fairly stiff too. On my last Tomcat, I had trouble with them staying upright, not falling back, because they were so heavy where the rotational point was. But these ones actually work pretty well for that. Then we have our vertical stabilizers, which have the new design, which I posted before in a few different groups of how I was designing this. I'll turn it this way. But they actually hinge at the bottom to get an the entire back part of the rudder actually moves somewhat realistically, although it's not perfect because the actual angle of rotation would be on an angle. But given the size and what Lego is doing, I decided that it was an okay thing, and it's not too noticeable if it just rotates at the bottom and it kind of sticks out a little at the top. But altogether, it looks pretty good. And the best part about it is because it's all flat, I can do stickering on both sides of them to make it look really, really realistic. If we turn it back over a little bit, we can see back here, this is where the fuel dump port is right there. It's actually supposed to be dark red, but there's no dark red piece in that. And then some other instrumentation, as well as the upper air brake, which can be raised up right there, which is actually fairly realistically shaped, although it is a little fragile, but it's got the dark red underneath it as well, which gives it a really, really nice look. And from this point, you can also see kind of the whole profile of how the Tomcat looks, very streamlined, flat up the back until it gets to the cockpit where it starts to bubble out a little bit. As you can see right here, everything else is very flat down to the intakes and very curved over kind of to the wing sections. All right, I think we're going to try to turn this thing upside down now. Just got to get a good grip on it. So this thing is actually pretty strong. Like I can't hold it with one hand. So we'll flip it over really carefully. So under here, there's a lot going on. Right at the front, we can see the front landing gear right here, and then at the back, there's also the main landing gear here and here, which are all actually they're fairly functional to how the actual thing should work, and they're very strong considering the few leniencies that I had to put in to actually make them work a little bit better, so that they would be so strong. But down here, yeah, you can see more of the intakes and how they're actually attached onto there. I'll get rid of some of these armaments and fuel tanks, just so we can see a little bit better what's going on here. Oops, that guy wasn't supposed to come off. There. So this, you can really kind of see the tennis court area is what they called it, between the two engine nacelles. This is where they'd be able to pack whatever type of armaments they were putting in there. The most famous one, of course, is the AIM-54 Phoenix, which I actually have a little fairing in one of them right here for that. So I have 2 of them on this model. You could technically put on 4, but because I've built a stand for this model that takes up most of the tennis court area to support the actual plane, it's really best when you only have the 2. And then you can do the 2 Sparrow and the 2 Sidewinder loaded as well, and that seems to work pretty good. But from here, we can get a little bit closer view of how the rear landing gear systems work here, which is a little bit crazy. But if we were looking to actually retract the main landing gear, which works pretty well, what we do is remove the Sparrow, because, I mean, you could probably do it without removing the Sparrow, which is easier. No need to remove the hard point though. You can just move the landing gear door flat back. And we'll just pull back on the landing gear a little to separate that strut, which is just attached to a little bar inside, and then this whole thing actually raises up and it slides out of the actual landing gear wheel. And this part doesn't actually get tucked away in the model. This part just goes to the side. So there are some pieces that actually don't get to fit in the model, but then the landing gear actually just goes in and it rotates 90 degrees like the real model, all on a Mixels hinge. And then the doors can close. And then because of the spacing though, I couldn't do the third part of the door. So instead I just have a little detachable piece which just covers it over. And it covers it over pretty nicely for what it's supposed to look like in there. And it's all nice and cleaned away. And then we can go back and put our Sparrow back. And it's all very nice and tucked away. Fairly realistic actually, considering what I had to go through for this. And especially considering how strong the landing gear are. The landing gear are really strong on this thing. And I'll demonstrate that in a second I'll push it around a little bit to show you exactly how strong these things actually are. But for now, we're just going to take the landing gear back out because I'd like to put it down soon. That is one thing about this model that is very heavy. It is, it's heavy, but it's not going to fall apart on you. At least it shouldn't. No promises. That's the problem with airplane models, especially ones like the Tomcat, where so much stuff moves. Like the whole wing system is so fragile. Like it's not too bad on this model, but in general, if you were to compare it to like oh no, my landing gear just fell off. Crap. All right, that wasn't supposed to happen. I can't see what I'm doing here. There we go. All right. There we go. We'll pretend that didn't happen. And that part of the landing gear just tucks back. The Sparrow goes back here, and there you go. Landing gear's back out, and it's very strong. It moves back and forth a little bit, but that's actually okay because when it turns, the landing gear actually want to get pulled out anyways. So it's nice to have a little bit of play, but it does not move back and forth forward, which is really nice. All right. I'll turn it around this way. I don't really see what I'm grabbing on the top side, so I hope I'm not breaking anything. If we go back under here, oh, I felt something move. We have the rear of the airplane, and right here we have our 2 lower air brakes, which line up very well with the upper air brake. And we have our arrestor hook, which also comes down right here, which actually, doesn't use a bar piece, it uses candlestick pieces right now. Although I'm still debating whether I want to keep this little pattern, because some of the Tomcats had patterns similar to this, just in much smaller little ring increments, but I don't mind the look of it actually. But it is actually fairly strong, and although I wouldn't try to actually stop this Lego model with just that little piece, of course, but it's pretty good at representing what it should look like. And the whole shaping underneath the tennis court of the engine nacelles, I'm pretty happy with how it actually turned out under there. Here. Well, we still have it upside down before I turn it up over again. I can just show off the little armaments I have on there. So I do have a Phoenix pack right here, and basically what this is actually made up of two pieces. This is the AIM-54 Phoenix missile, which I'm still might redesign these. I'm not perfectly happy with them, but I have the little fairing that goes on too, so the little fairing actually just clips on the bottom right here like that. We can put the other one on too. Oops. Like that. And the Phoenixes just sit right underneath there, and actually they don't look too bad. They sit a little low, not too bad. But they fit pretty well, and they're pretty strong on there. And then I also have some two little drop tanks, which depending on the variant would be different colors, but for this one they're just white right now. So yeah, we'll just put those back on there, and they just clip on to the bottom, like so. Oops, this one's... Alright, now let's put it back over because I'm tired of holding this thing. Oh good, I didn't break anything. Look at that. That's good to see. Alright. Yeah, so I'll close the wings up for this part just so I have some more room on my desk. But I did... Oh, that piece... There we go. This is problem solved. So the front landing gear actually does get to move around a little bit. It can turn almost all the way, or pretty much all the way around. And that was really important to me because I wanted to be able to actually move the Tomcat around. Well, like it's sitting on the deck, right? So you can actually turn it. So if I turn the landing gear a little bit, it is actually able to turn back and forth, just like the real thing. And of course, I didn't really show this off, but the front landing gear does come out as well. Does retract as well. Here into the nose of the plane, although it's a little tight in there once it's in there, so to get it out you actually need a piece separator because unfortunately it's actually in there pretty well, but it does tuck away quite cleanly and pretty realistically as well. So, but the whole point of why I wanted it to be so clean was because I actually, like I mentioned earlier, I actually did make a display stand for this guy, so you can actually have it up in flight mode. So really quickly I'll just retract the two landing gear again, so I can get it into its flight position. Hopefully this goes a little bit better than last time. I always notice that everything goes wrong when it's on camera. Because I swear I've done this about 1 billion times and it doesn't normally come out. There we go, okay, so it's gonna be good. There we go. There. Put these away. It is actually pretty fast. I'm pretty impressed with, given the fact that there's only a couple pieces that have to sit outside of the actual, like the little struts. I'm not disappointed by that at all. I mean, it would have been nice to have everything fold away quite cleanly, but that's a little much to ask when the system isn't quite how the real thing works anyways, so it can't retract quite like the real thing does anyways. But we'll flip it over. And the stand actually just sits right there behind the, right behind where the fairings for the Phoenix missile are actually. It just sits quite nicely on its stand, like so. Yeah. We can move the camera up a little bit here. There. So from this angle, we can see a little bit more of the flight profile of what the Tomcat should actually look like, and it is actually fairly good looking in for what I was expecting. It works pretty well with the wings out and everything. It's got quite a nice little profile, and I do like especially the underside. The underside is I'm very happy with how the underside turned out in this kind of regard when you look at it from down there. bring it down to here. Oops. For example, like right there, like those kind of profiles I think look pretty good for what the Tomcat should actually be looking like, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. There's a few changes I'm going to still make to this. For example, actually, I think I'm going to redesign my sidewinders, possibly redesign my AIM 54s. My sidewinders, they just look a little thin with the stick there, so I was thinking I have a little design that I've kind of drawn up for sidewinders using the candlestick pieces instead, which are a little bit thicker, and I think it would be a little bit more realistic for the sizing of what they should be for a model about this size. So I'm going to experiment with that in ways of connecting them on. And then I want to get some different pilot minifigures, of course, but I'm also missing, I have these little veins on the back, just like the real Tomcat does, made with these old style katanas, and I thought I had 4 of them to do all 4 veins, but unfortunately I only have 3, so I need to get another one of those. And of course I want to get the canopy pieces in trans clear, so it can look a little bit more realistic, because the canopy is supposed to be clear. Although I might move the front window back to trans blue, because that is somewhat how the actual Tomcat looked. But other than that, I'm actually very happy with this build. I'm happy with the functionality. It's much improved, I think. I think most people can agree, than my previous attempt at the Tomcat, which well, it looked okay. I don't, especially the cockpit, I did not like the profile that nose had, and I think that this one does a much cleaner job at capturing how the actual Tomcat, especially in the nose section in the cockpit and the intakes, should actually look. And I think it's a much cleaner design than the previous ones, and it's a lot more realistic to the actual scale of what it's supposed to be. And I'm overall really happy with it. Yeah, so altogether this thing took probably about a week to design and build. I sat downstairs and just messed around with my pieces and stuff like that, and I did some small little changes to it, and I've already started working up the instructions, like a set of instructions for this guy if people are interested in getting those. I'm not really sure what I'll be doing with them yet, whether I'll sell them or just give them out, or I don't know yet. But I'm planning on making instructions for a few different variants, like an all gray variant, of course, and I'm going to draw up some sticker designs as well for the basic stickers of what each different Tomcat should look like. And I'm sure I'll do VF1, VF84. I was looking at doing the VF1 Tomcat from Top Gun, just because, of course, if people are actually interested in purchasing that is a common design that people will want to get, right? And I was looking at like the Top Hatters or somebody like that, another squadron like that or something like that, just because I like the really specialized designs. That's one of my favorite things about the Tomcat, and this is very much my favorite plane. Like I don't think I don't have a plane that I probably like more than Tomcat. There's just something about the Tomcat that has it's like an old muscle car kind of thing. It's like it's nostalgic, but it's also, it's an old style plane, but it looks really good kind of thing, right? Like even I'd say I prefer the look over even the newer next generation planes that are coming out now. Like obviously it wouldn't stand up to any of them. But there's something about the look that comes back and you just go, that's a nice looking airplane. So I want to make sure that when I release instructions that I'll be able to have all the different variants, whether it's the white belly like this one right here, or an all gray option, or slightly different like the Jolly Rogers, which would have changed vertical stabilizers and change kind of paint patterns and stuff like that. I just want to make sure that everybody would be able to make what they actually want to make with it, right? Just because I don't want to limit it to just one squadron or something, because I think that would be a little boring, especially if I am going to sell it, because I want to give people a variety, because everybody's got their own little favorite look, especially when it comes to Tomcats, of what squadron looks the best. I mean, obviously, Jolly Rogers are very well known and are quite popular for people who do tend to make F-18s or F-14s or something like that. But I think, yeah, the F-14 is a plane that looked really good with its markings, and I think I gotta make sure I do it justice when I actually do write up those sheets, so that it actually does look proper. Yeah, but other than that, that's about it. This is my 2021 F-14 Tomcat MOC. Yeah, I don't have a piece count for it, unfortunately. I don't know how much it weighs, but it is heavy. and it's about 22 inches long, and it's really, really strong, and I think it looks pretty good, all things considered. It's not too bad. So anyways, thanks for watching, and goodbye.